My name is Aram.
My name is Dylan.
We can't tell you our last names, or even what city we are in. If we did, they could find us. And that would be the end of this show.
We're sending this message so that more people can learn the truth. Maybe then, somehow, the human race can survive until the Andalites return and rescue us.
Until then, we will be discussing each book in the Animorph series as I read them for the first time.
And I'll be guiding this journey as I reconnect with stories I read a long time ago.
Welcome to Podspeak. Chapter 3. The Encounter.
So,
Book 3.
book 3,
The Tobias book.
the first Tobias book, because there's 54 standard books, like not including the Megamorphs and the Choose Your Own. We're going to get several for each kid. I honestly didn't know where this one was going to go because it's clearly way too early for them to be introducing the weird shit yet. And I wasn't 100% sure where they were going to go with this one based on that title. It's too early to bring in a lot of the really weird shit. There's a second where I just thought this wasn't going to be the Yeerks again. But again, we're setting things up. So that isn't a complaint. It was just in the setup, she managed to bring across that momentary confusion so hard that it threw me off the trail. And I respect that a lot. This one was a lot cleaner in terms of a summary because we weren't dealing with the plot as much. This was one of the first times where we got some really horrors of war, we're currently dealing with shit. It's a lot of inner monologue.
This was mostly a lot of we're with Tobias and we figure out more about how he feels and his struggle with his humanity. But the rest of it was just basically a mission.
Yeah. And the mission was real straightforward. At one point, a invisible ship flies past Tobias and he's like, that's fucked. Don't like that.
And this ship is massive.
It turns out to be effectively a freight truck. They are coming down, draining water out of a small mountain lake. They have controllers who are park rangers that are just clearing the area and forcing campers further away. There's one point where they legitimately just send out Hork-Bajir and they're like, no, just kill them. If you can bring them in, bonus controllers, but just get the people out. But they are just stealing water and air, bringing it back up to the mothership in orbit, and just making sure that everyone stays alive. For a series where you could get away with glossing over so much of the detail, you should respect the intelligence of younger readers, but at the same time, there are things you can get away with. You didn't need to say oh, no. The aliens up there, they don't have food and water, so they need to come down and get more food and water. You could have just said the mothership was stocked and everyone would have believed you.
Right. Or that it made its own food or whatever.
They even made a comment of so it turns out they're not at Star Trek level. They don't just have okay, cool.
There's a lot of references. It definitely sets this book in a time period, but it's also how kids would talk. They would just reference their daily lives and their popular culture to make sense of what they were facing.
They do some scouting. They grab some wolf morphs to kind of check out what the situation is. They basically confirm that everything's fucked. And the final plan that they land on is we're going to turn into trout.
This is the first time where I'm like, okay, you know what? Marco's right. This is a dumb plan. This is an exceptionally dumb, shot in the dark plan. You know nothing about you're going to turn into fish.
You don't know how long that journey is going to take. You don't know if there will be air left in the ship, or if it'll be completely filled with water. So you're going to turn back into humans, and then
you don't know if there's 3 filters on the way in. You don't know if there's a series of things you have absolutely no idea of, and you're just swimming into the dark to get vacuumed up. That is insane.
So when there are forest fires, they're the bucket. I don't know if they use planes or sometimes they use choppers where they legitimately take a giant bucket, scoop up some lake water, and then dump it over the fire. This isn't that. This isn't just we brought a ship the size of a small mall down and scooped up. It's a vacuum. They drop a fucking straw into Lake Crystal Lake, and then we just suck it up.
Just hoover it right up.
Yeah.
And they want to do that as trout, which fair. Like I've seen trout put into trout machines and sucked into equal vacuums. Clearly they could survive it. But again, there's probably filters. There's probably a series of things. Maybe they're monitoring what's in the water. There's a whole bunch of stuff they could do with the technology they have. And you literally are going in blind. In a morph you've never used before because they're fucking fishing to get the trout morphs.
And then to make it a step worse, the ship shows up a couple of times. And then at one point, basically for some reason, it's never really clear why, aside from to raise the stakes, Visser shows up the third time they go. Like Tobias sees the boat, then they do scouting, then they do mission. And on the mission, Visser shows up out of nowhere. Don't really know why.
He's micromanaging.
Which is honestly, for his character, great. I'm very much on board for that.
It's fitting.
But at the same time, I'm left sitting there and like, just narratively.
He can't be everywhere.
Why would he be here?
Yeah, why would this be so important? It's clearly something that's been going fine. There's been no hiccups. So why are you here monitoring this?
The only hiccup, the only thing that sort of makes sense is basically during the final scouting mission, there's the Hork-Bajir chasing a person. And Tobias intervenes, attacks the Hork-Bajir, the guy gets away, and then...
Which is Andalite, just screams Andalite.
And they mentioned that Visser 3 killed that guy. Like the Hork-Bajir and the Yeerk in his head, that he just killed those two is like a don't fuck up in front of me again.
That does seem to be his management style. Like, don't ever, ever make a mistake or you die.
He does it twice in this book.
It's got to be tough on the morale of the crew, man. They're hanging in the balance all the time.
So they get the trout morphs, and their plan, once they see that this time Visser is around, there's high security, and because, yes, being attacked by a random bird screamed Andalite, they're executing every animal. They're running around with fucking disintegration rays, just smoking deer, blasting birds out of the air, killing every animal that goes by. And they stop and go like, fuck, we're not going to be able to get close enough to turn into trout. So their master plan, the brilliant idea, which is like so clearly driven by momentum. Like, we're here, we're not going to get a second shot at this. We got to do something.
Because they had school.
We got to go to school, and I got a thing with my parents tomorrow.
They couldn't get their schedules right. In the middle of their battle plan, they're like, well, look, I've got choral on Friday, and you've got marching band.
So what we're going to do is we're each going to turn into trout one by one, and then we're going to do a reverse prey situation, and Tobias is just going to throw us into the fucking lake.
Yeah.
Of course that works, but then they get sucked up and then they realize like our entire plan was we're going to get in the ship through the water system and then we're going to get out inside the ship and we're going to take down the cloaking mechanism while it's over the city and everyone will see it and there will be footage of it and they'll be like, holy shit, and they won't be able to cover it up and everyone will know the Yeerks are here and then we can mount a real defense. And then they got inside the water tank and everyone went, so it turns out the water tank's actually not connected to anything else. We don't have a way to get out of here. So we're absolutely, definitely going to die in here. Tobias, do whatever you can to like make our lives matter. We're going to die here. They even get into like, because Tobias has a massive crush on Rachel. And they even have the little like, hey, Rachel, I never got to tell you. And she just goes, I know, do what you have to do. In the first episode, I told you Rachel was going to be the soldier. what did I tell you, man?
Yeah,
Like,
100%.
Rachel does not give a fuck.
No, she's ready for the fight.
She's here to ruin the Yeerks, and if she dies in the process, so fucking be it.
Yeah, I really do like her the best, I think.
And then it turns out the entire thing just works out on sheer fluke of Tobias notices that, like, they kill a second controller, the Visser does, because a stray shot at Tobias hits the ship.
They even mention how it's like the damage is superfluous, like it doesn't matter.
It's like a dime-sized hole in the hull, which actually in like a spaceship could be fucking massive because of the way pressure works, but whatever.
Sure.
He kills this guy. Tobias even gives one of my favorite writer cop-outs. I'm not even going to tell you what happened. That's going to be a horror that lives with me until the day I die.
There's a couple times she's done that already, where if it's too graphic, she's just like, look, I'm not going to sit here and describe a disembowelment for 14-year-olds. You're just going to have to figure it out yourself.
Just trust me, it was bad.
Yeah.
So Tobias, realizing at this point, now that they've figured out that it's a bird, they're just killing every bird.
Including that one bird that he's like kind of fancied as a bird.
We'll get into Tobias's actual like arc in a second, but he just goes and sits on top of the ship and then just waits because they can't shoot him.
That's exactly what you do. What are you going to do?
Which, again, a terrible move, because if it turned out that he was actually an Andalite. Putting yourself in Visser's shoes, if you're making reasonable decisions, then the next thing you do is one of two things. You either go like, all right, Andalite, I can wait 2 hours.
Right.
You just wait him out. Now you've taken out an Andalite. It's a bird. Option 2 is you're a spaceship. Go up.
Into space.
There's just a point where he'll die, and it's fine.
Right. You make a sharp bank.
Instead, they scramble. They launch this massive attack. They manage to accidentally destroy one of their own fighters, and Tobias attacks a random controller, steals its gun, takes the gun. This hawk, with a gun in its talons, flies up and shoots a laser beam in just an arc through the bridge of the ship.
Which is great.
On the way down, it clips a helicopter, which cracks open the tank, which lets the other 4 fall out. They get into bird morphs before hitting the ground. They all make it away. And that's sort of our end point.
A really spectacular end point where they were much more successful. Well, in some ways.
They were much more successful than they deserved.
Right.
But at the same time, they did not accomplish, like,
no one saw it.
They got no more ground because no one saw it, but they've continued fucking up everything.
And also, like, you know, again, maybe they've got 12 of those ships, and that just, like, sets them back a little bit, right? But maybe they only have
but even
one.
Then, like, think about, like, let's pretend that you, in your household, use all of the water that you could have. You're at maximum supply. Now, let's say there are 12 ships. I reduce your total water by 8%.
That takes shorter showers. It's going to be a bummer.
You got to take shorter showers, but like how much shorter? Like how much of your water supply is that? How much do you got to shave out of like drinking water or like cooking?
Because you can't take it out of coolant and you can't take out of certain things that just need a set amount of water.
Yeah. And the Yeerks live in pools.
Right. So they need a shit ton of water.
It didn't even occur to me when we were reading this that it was for the mothership in orbit. I saw that and immediately went, oh, this is how they got the pools.
Yeah, I bet it is too. I'm sure it was also used for that. It makes sense.
This was useful. It was just an actual strike against the Yeerks instead of being a fundamental rallying point for the humans.
Which also will just draw more attention to them, will make it a higher priority on Visser's list. But again, like you said, Visser's dumb. So this went to shit because Visser is dumb. If someone else had been in charge, I think that's why he needed to be there. Because Kay Applegate knew if there was someone else in charge, they would have been efficient and everyone would be dead. They had to put the Visser there to give a reason for the plan to be bad.
Except, Aram, this is going to be my little sort of, not even a spoiler, we're going to call it a teaser.
Okay, fair enough.
He's Visser 3. They are numbered like down. The higher your number, the lower your rank, right?
Right.
Like Visser 5 has to take orders from Visser 3. And what we're doing here is we're just setting up over and over again Visser 3 can't handle his job. So, like, yeah, you're 100% right. He is stupid. He's incompetent. He doesn't know what he's doing. And we are absolutely just setting up if someone else was in charge, maybe things would go better.
Very smart of her, because again, it does strain believability a little bit to think that these kids could keep getting away with this. But if your enemy's dumb and makes really impulsive decisions that crash 3 ships, perfect. That actually is going to work great.
Not to mention another wonderful thing that she's doing here that we sort of touched on a little bit is it strains credulity that the kids will keep leading a successful war against the Yeerks, but they aren't. The things they've accomplished are interfering with a Yeerk pool. They didn't destroy it. They didn't damage anything. They freed maybe a couple people.
They basically ran through a store, did like a quick TikTok dance, threw shit around, and then ran out.
And then in the next book, they sat in on a meeting.
Right.
Like the only information, the only real intel they got was one, that the controllers can resist control if they really fucking try hard enough. And also, nobody likes Visser 3. Everybody thinks he's a big fuckwit. That's what they came out of that with, because that book ended with them being captured and receiving no actionable intel.
Right, exactly. That's what I was about to say. Is it good information? Sure. Is it actionable? Absolutely not. There's nothing they can do with that. And they almost all got killed.
So we talk about this in terms of like, should they be able to wage a war? No, but they're not. They are legitimately showing up, being a little annoying, and then leaving. That puts it in a great situation where even like this mission, as it was supposed to be them getting onto the ship and disabling the camouflage and dealing this huge blow to the Yeerks' ability to act stealthily, at which point it turns into a war, an actual invasion, as opposed to this like really subtle infiltration. That would have been fantastic. And that is not what they did. Like, this success is a failure.
Well, it's not. I mean, again, we don't know how much this set back the Yeerks' plans. If there's one of these ships, it's huge. If there's 2 or 3 of them, it's still huge. Like,
here, let me give you a hint. There's 51 books left.
Right. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I mean, look, it's also, good to keep your enemy guarded.
Keep him off his toes, or on his toes, off his feet. Fuck with him. Fuck with him real good.
Something with toes. Yeah, I gotcha.
Cut off one of his toes.
Right, exactly.
Even that doesn't work. He has hooves. All of that is just background in this case, because this entire book was actually about being queer, basically.
Yes.
This was very much like, it's a flawed metaphor, but there is such a fucking trans analogy in this book. And I know that wasn't what she was writing, but it is there.
Anytime you write something about feeling trapped in a body that isn't yours, it's going to hit with people. I'm sure there's a lot of kids who were reading this and they're like, this is exactly how I feel.
Because the entire thing is just Tobias dealing with the fact, one of the things that they keep coming back to is food. We find out that the way Tobias has been eating has been Jake basically stealing scraps from dinner, bringing them up a little plate and setting up a little Tupperware with like a little bit of like
the saddest picnic ever, whatever
meatloaf patty his mom made, and some mashed potatoes and green beans. And Tobias goes in and has a moment where he's like, I don't know how I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to tell Jake that I can't eat mashed potatoes and green beans. I'm a bird.
It's meat or nothing.
And also this cold meat isn't doing it because my brain wants to be eating warm, living meat.
Because animal brain does. His human brain does not.
No. He views that as a failure, or surrender to the hawk, a point where he is less of a human being because he's doing the thing.
It's also just physically horrifying, which is the part that really that's the part that really messes with me when I read these. The idea that, okay, I have to give in, but that my humanity would be like repulsed by this action, even though the other brain is really into it. That would be very damaging, I would think.
Birds of prey don't eat gently. And it's something that she brings up is that it's not just warm meat. It's not a fresh kill. A lot of birds of prey attack, pin down their prey, and eat. The killing is secondary to the eating.
Yeah, the killing is just a side effect from the eating.
I think it's after his first little scouting mission to the lake. There's a point where Tobias entirely just, he's flying around and trying to have like a nice day. And the bird brain just wins and he just kills a rat. He gets a couple of bites deep before boy brain kicks in. He goes, holy shit, I'm not supposed to be doing this. And he tries to kill himself. Outright, just like he goes to the mall and he tries to fly into the sliding door. And then when that doesn't work, he goes through the mall and tries to pivot like up and just slam into the skylight.
And Marco saves him.
Yeah.
With a baseball, throws it through the skylight. That was the most unlikely thing to happen this entire book. But good job, Marco.
Tobias is just so sad. We get his whole parental situation in this book. The reason that he gets to be a hawk and it doesn't raise too many radars is that he was an orphan shipped between his aunt and uncle who got divorced and now live on opposite sides of the U.S. So he just does the play them off each other thing, tells his aunt that he's living with his uncle, tells his uncle that he's living with his aunt, and then they just both aren't looking.
Right. And they don't talk to each other. So, clever. That'll work for a while.
There is a point where it won't.
Yeah, no, it can't work forever. He's a child.
Yeah.
They have to account for him at some point.
His entire situation is just compounding, like the idea of, this sucks. And also, it's fine, though, because no one misses me.
What does it matter if I was a person, if I didn't take up room in anyone's life?
They put a really nice bow on it in that the entire book, there is another hawk. Really kind of an uncomfortable, like, weird romance element to it. Like, they acknowledge that, like, hawks don't make friends. They just mate.
But they can woo a bit,
But there's another hawk that he just keeps running into, and he starts off the book. Like, he enlists Rachel. It's Deal and Dan Hawks Used Cars. He has a live hawk as a mascot, just in a cage.
Right. The revenge plot that Kay Applegate throws into the beginning of every book so she can punish someone she doesn't like.
Yeah, this time used car dealerships. And Tobias flies in, scares everybody back for a second, uses that delay to put the code into the combination lock because he's just stood back for a while and used his hawk eyes to watch the guy put the combination in to lock the bird.
I love that.
And he just sets the bird free. And then he spends that entire time, every once in a while, he sees the bird, and the bird is clearly like giving him like, hey, you should come hang out eyes. And also his brain is going, yeah, I'm a hawk. I should just do the hawk stuff with the other hawk. And the thing they finally settle on is the reason Tobias gets away at the end of the book is just they recognize that red-tailed hawk is an Andalite. And so while Tobias is getting away, they see her, the other hawk who has just made this area her territory, and they kill that bird.
Yeah, in a very sad way. They like fry off one of her wings and she spirals to the ground. There's even talk afterwards where like, should we go, get her? And he's like, no, she'll be eaten by wolves or raccoons or perhaps another hawk. He just kind of accepts it as like, no, there's no life for her now. Her wing's gone. Like, no. Like, she just needs to die, which was very sad.
It is, but it's also where he needed to end up. Because the end thing, the thing that they end on, like, the first lines was, my name is Tobias, a freak of nature, one of a kind. His entire thing is, I'm fucked up and I shouldn't exist. But then we end on, like, him coming to terms with it. Like, I am both a person and a bird, and that's just how it is.
I want to know a couple things. If an Andalite remains in a form for 2 Earth hours, as it worked out, do they get stuck?
Yes.
So they also can be trapped inside their animal forms. And that's how they must have found out that you can be trapped inside your animal forms because it happened to them. Okay.
Right. Tobias's whole thing, like the reason they kill that bird is so that they can have the conversation where he has to sit there. And he has that statement of like, no, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to find her. We're not going to bury her because she's just going to be eaten. Like, that's how hawks go. Like, the body isn't there There's no way it's been several days. But like, also, I'm sad about it.
Not to mention, like, if he had gone there, his human part is sad about it. His bird part probably would have been like, well, might as well eat her.
Oh, her body will be eaten by a raccoon or a wolf or another bird, maybe even another hawk. That's the way it is. That's the way it is for wild animals, Tobias, not humans. Yeah, I know. That's how I know you're wrong, Rachel, at least partly. I am a human, yes, but I am also a hawk. I'm a predator who kills for food. And I'm also a human being who grieves over death. I knew I was human when I realized how sad I was that she was killed. See, a hawk wouldn't care. If she had been my mate, I would have missed her, been disturbed, but sadness, that's a human emotion. I know it seems strange, but I guess only a human would really care that a bird had died. I have to live as a bird. That is where I am. But also, I am still Tobias. I'm not accepting that I am a bird is not giving up on the fact that I am a person, which again interferes with our sort of queer analogy there, in that it creates this weird sort of pseudo closet where you've accepted that you can't be the person that you know you are on the inside. And this is why I come back to, she was not writing a trans narrative, and also it should not be taken as a direct analogy, because that is not the ending you would put in that story.
Agreed. But also, there's plenty of people who have to stay in that closet. They don't have a choice, because if they stepped out, their lives would be in danger. Their entire existence could end. That is a decent analogy there. Like, I could see the fear. Again, not on purpose, but it does run parallel.
Because the books are so small, because they're so like contained, up to this point, the real sort of chops that Applegate gets to show are just, let me build this world out a little bit. Let me show you some of the crazy fucking sci-fi horror beats I can give you. Let me do a couple little body horror things. God, I'm not even sure how to classify it. It's just a nicely put together world, but it's very phenomenological. This was the first time where you go like, okay, you can do character work. You can do like larger, like meaningful, personal narratives as well.
Yeah, every time she jumped into the kids thinking about themselves as animals, or struggling with the animal brain, or the instinctual reactions that animal would have, that's when she's on her best writing.
Mm-hmm.
So this book really was a way to showcase all of that, because she's clearly been thinking about this for some time.
Obviously, this is no book gets written like in one go, but I think the first of these books came out in 94, and the last one came out in like 98.
Wow. That's actually amazing that she wrote like 60 books in 4 years.
I think there were only like 10 or so that were ghostwriters.
Well, I did read about how she said that she had a team of writers working with her, but she was like the director.
96 to 2001. So it's 5 years. That's 10 books a year. The following books in the series were ghostwritten. It's like 25. Honestly, it's like the entire back half.
Right. Gotcha. When she just got rich and was like, okay, I'm going to sketch it out. You guys do the details.
It's the last 2 that she wrote herself, but 25 onward is not K.A. Applegate directly.
Which is sensible. I mean, if you get like a big story like this, it's probably good to have other people in when the world gets that large. That makes sense.
The only books fully written by Applegate after 25 were, number 24 were 26, 32, 53, and 54. And all of the Megamorphs and Chronicles books. So it was one of those things where like she got the bulk of it done. And like you said, outlined all of it, set up what needed to happen. But then like once we hit the back half of the series, it is director Applegate and the many, many writers, which is honestly a really cool way to do something like this.
Yeah, as I have learned from trying to do creative projects, you never want to be a voice in isolation. You always want to have additional input. The project always gets better.
The only complaint I really have at this point is, and like this is me picking hairs, this is just something I would like, both because, you know, I would enjoy it more as a product and also would make this show easier. I would love to have a little bit more continuity.
Sure.
Like, we talked about this a little bit at the end of book 2, but I have no idea what the plot of the next book is. Like, they don't have a lead. They could, I guess, follow Chapman again. The Yeerks are getting increasingly frustrated, and eventually, like, that sort of shit leads to the Visser making mistakes.
It's very contained because obviously the kids have no way of knowing what's going on. So I think we're being kept like, this is the perspective of the kids. This is what they know, which is good for creating little contained stories, but it is frustrating. We can't get that omniscient view where we pull out and see a bit of the plan.
Part of why I keep referring to Rachel as very much like a soldier is that she isn't the general. She isn't a warrior who is going in there and this is my battle plan. She is angry after last book and is on board to kill these monsters. And that's it.
Yeah, she wants revenge.
Marco still isn't 100% on board. And honestly, I liked Marco a lot more in this book.
Agreed.
Because he's starting to get into territory of like, when he's pushing back, he's right.
He was completely right this whole book.
He's an asshole about it. Part of the problem he ran into was just he was pushing against Tobias, who at that point was immovable. Like, he was dealing with too much shit to be spoken to rationally, and everyone else jumped in on moral grounds, and they hit a point where, like, you know what, Marco? You keep saying you want out? Fine, you're out. Don't fucking worry about it. We're going in the morning. All right? And they go around like, yes, yes, yes. Marco, no. We go in the afternoon. If all of us are gone from school in the morning, and in the afternoon something goes wrong at a Yeerk site, they know who we are.
Because he's so paranoid and so negative, he's always thinking of consequence, which they are not. And he was incredibly helpful this time because he was dead right.
So fundamentally correct. Jake takes a real back seat, which is a fantastic thing to see. He is the tacit leader in that he has to sign off on the plan, but he even makes reference to it. Like, this was Tobias's show. He called the shots, and Jake was just, at some point, was just like, you say you're not a leader, but like, take it, man. You're in charge here. Tell me where you need me.
It's kind of like when someone else takes control of the Avengers, but Captain America's there. Like, he's not in charge maybe for that mission, but he's still kind of in charge.
And then Cassie is Cassie. That phrasing makes it sound dismissive, but I think Cassie's character is phenomenal. I don't think there's a huge amount of evolution in her over time, aside from like, we're going to occasionally challenge that, you know. You sit there and you're very comfortable in your little, like, we should help people, you know, do the right thing, that sort of, she's the moral center. But we're at war. So, like, we're going to have to make calls.
Yeah, you need to learn how to make compromises.
Yeah, so we'll get stuff like that. But at the same time, she is the character that very much is where she is. And she should be.
Yeah, and she's kind of happy to be there.
Yeah.
Like, I think she has the least inner turmoil of all the kids. She just has to face situations and, like, challenges to her morality.
The next book, this is one where I specifically don't want you to know anything about what's happening going in.
You don't want me to read the book?
What part of going in did you miss?
Well, but, like, how can I not, like, look at the cover?
I mean, like, don't look it up. Don't read the summary because there's some stuff that's going to get given away. Like, it's Cassie. There's a dolphin on the cover.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think I have seen that. I do realize there are going to be dolphins.
This is a very important book.
All right. Awesome.
And I think you're going to really, really like it.
I do like dolphins.
Yeah, and they do a lot of cool stuff with the dolphins, but honestly, the dolphins are not the important thing here. There is, like I said, this book is a big deal.
Okay.
And I think you're going to be really fucking pleased with it.
All right. Well, I've got it loaded up, so I will read that this week.
Yeah. And then we'll, I don't know, probably get another one of these out in the new year.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about with that book?
The only thing is that, like, you can... No, you know what? No, I don't have anything else to add right now. I'm going to hold that.
The only other thing worth mentioning is just the fact that you mentioned how good Applegate is at talking about, you know, being the animals. The fact that one of the major threats to their safety during the time where they were in wolf morph, when they were going in to first do their little reconnaissance, was the fact that Jake had turned into a male wolf And specifically, Marco had to be the female wolf because they realized that if there were two males in the pack, they would fight, and Marco lost the coin flip.
They are very standard, like, ooh, I don't want to be a girl. I was like, oh, I kind of rolled my eyes a bit at that part, yeah.
And to be fair, they have the whole conversation of like, come on, like we could both be male wolves, it'd be fine. I can get control over the morph. And I don't remember if it was Rachel or Cassie. Probably Rachel, because it's a little bit more aggressive, but basically just goes like, you and Jake butt heads over who's in charge as humans. Do you really think you're going to beat out the wolf brain for that?
You know, when I read that, I was like, does that really solve the situation? Because, like, what if Wolf Jake wants to mount Wolf Marco? Like, what do you do then?
Well, yes, that is a very reasonable question if we're dealing with this in real life, but that is also a question we're just not going to fucking deal with.
No, we're just not going to go there. Right? But, like, it's the first thought I had. Like if you can't, it would seem like at least you're having similar male impulses, right? Like that seems to be easier maybe to get a handle of than I am not just going to change species, but I'm going to change sexes.
Regardless.
I guess they're just rolling the dice, though, whenever they do
They
this.
are honestly just guessing most of the time. And also, like I said, there's a lot of stuff where we're just going to brush over it because it is a kid's book. And also, quite frankly, it's not interesting.
Right. It isn't. I would agree. Like the little love angles they've brought up, I don't care about.
You see it a lot in a lot of conversations around like fantasy, especially when Game of Thrones decided that they were going to put like sexual assault in like every other episode. Like, oh, it's more realistic. You know, it's no, not really. It isn't that realistic. And also, these kids are turning into wolves. That's the line you want to draw in terms of realism.
Yeah.
I mean, it isn't going to introduce anything relevant for conflict. It's just going to add page count so that we can talk about two 14-year-old boys who are trying to not fuck each other while they're dogs.
It would be very weird.
Do that?
Yeah, it's weird enough when they're just talking about like being attracted to each other. I'm like, like, all right, whatever. I was 20 when the first book came out. Like, I am very far separated from my teenage years.
I find it really funny that the major threat they came across in wolf form was they were running low on time. Like Tobias, who's a hawk, he has infinite time and is actually useful for is occasionally coming down and going like, guys, why are we stopping? Why do you keep doing this? Jake just keeps peeing on things.
Right, because he keeps scent marking.
Yeah. Everyone else is trying to figure out like, did you just have like a big fucking soda before we came out here? It's like, no, I don't think so. Like, does it carry over like that? Jake, you're marking your territory. I'm going to keep doing that, though, because I have to.
Which was a bad decision because that brought them in direct conflict with another group of wolves that were already there.
And then they did such a good job of foreshadowing that by having Tobias fuck that up first.
100%.
This point where Tobias is out circling, watching for issues. He goes back to report into everybody else, lands in front of one of the alpha of the pack and just goes like, hey, Jake, hey, Jake, why are you growling? Hey, Jake, why are there 5 of you? I thought there were only and then he flies away from the real wolves that he was trying to have a conversation with.
That was great. That was a great moment. It also underlined that he doesn't necessarily recognize them right away. He can't tell that those are his friends. He can't see one wolf from the other.
You can see a lot of details, but at some point, dogs is dogs.
Yeah, I mean, even to a hawk. I also like that he does keep track of the time because he can constantly just like look at a guy's watch or look at a clock that's like 6 miles away. He can always find a clock.
Like I said, this was a fantastic book, and we're really getting into the point where I think that we're hitting the stride.
This is the first time where I was like, I really want to just roll into the next book and like had to kind of pull back and wait because I really am starting to get into the story.
Thank you for joining us for Podspeak.
Animorphs was written by K.A. Applegate. Our show is edited by Aram, and our theme music is composed by Kai Engel.
For more information about us, ways to support the show, and to hear all of the podcasts we produce, head over to deadghostpro.com.
And remember,
The controllers are everywhere.